So, John, you're not part of the label.
I'm not part of the label.
I'm on you when you guys get your thing together, put something together. If it's good, we'll put it out.
Oh,
right?
It'll be good.
Okay.
It's just gonna take a while to get there, but it's good.
When you get the demos put together, and then I'll kick your I'll kick your butt into gear, and we'll do it right. And we'll do, when I say right, I don't mean overdubs. Ugh.
Yeah.
You overdub all you want in your home studio, but we'll get it right. We'll commit it to tape, and then we'll do tapes.
Down for that. Yeah.
Well, that's when anything I release on cassette, will have been recorded to an analog format. I'm not gonna. Some of these labels out there, they do this thing where they'll record digitally and then pump it out to a cassette and be like, "Yeah, it's analog, everybody." No. If it's analog, it's analog. So we got the big ol' 688. I'll have to show that to you after the podcast.
Yeah, totally. I'd like to see it.
It's in the other room. It's huge.
Yeah. It's
the size of this board.
Wow.
Yeah. And it runs cassette, but it sounds good. So instead of doing the what have you done for the label, right? What have you done for the label this week?
I researched bank accounts.
Yeah, there you go. See, and I put out Freeform Fridays and edited video. It's kind of a slow week. But John here, as he mentioned earlier in the podcast, you've had some addiction in your life.
Most of it, yeah.
And what I thought would be an interesting topic instead would be tell us your crazy heroin stories.
Crazy heroin stories. Honestly, I'm pretty lucky because for me, heroin's a pretty chill drug, so I don't usually go out and do crazy things. But I mean, it does get you into pretty crazy situations. Obviously, probably at my worst, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I through a series of events. I went out there. I was living in Austin. I went to Austin for treatment. And I fly back out there to be with my my girlfriend. We were in love desperately. And I went out there, and she took me into her home, and we were going to have a life together and all this stuff until my money ran out. I couldn't buy any more drugs. And then she kicked me out on the street, and so I was actually living in a cave off the side of the road. A cave. I had found my own cave. Yes.
Was it a naturally occurring cave?
Yes, it was a naturally occurring cave.
I guess there are naturally occurring caves out there.
There's a place. It's called Stony Point Park. It's off of. If any listeners have been to Los Angeles at all, or the Canoga Park area, it's right off the side of the road. It's called Stony Point. It's like a giant collection of boulders, and it's kind of like a mountain sort of thing.
And it's where teenagers go and bump naughty bits.
Yeah, pretty much. And there's also just like a lot of, drugs around that area, and people sell out of the mountain. It's a very strange little trade, but there's a series of caves in there.
How do you call your drug dealer?
You hike up to him.
You hike up? You don't just like yodel at the base.
You blow a horn. Yeah, there's a whole system. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So was that rock bottom? Was that where you found it?
No, actually. Well, I mean, that was a rock bottom for a while. That did propel me through about 3.5 years of sobriety. Recently I did have a slip, which lasted about a year.
Year?
Yeah. A year-long slip. I don't do slips, really. I can't, just with the nature of the illness.
You just fall off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically, there's just a lot of things that people don't really understand about addiction, that doctors don't understand about addiction, even to this day. I mean, it's in the book, the DSMV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the DSMV.
Whatever that thing is.
Or, I don't know.
As a classified illness, but basically how it works in my life is like what the disease of addiction is it's a two-part thing. The first part is obviously I can't stop and stay stopped. So, even when I try and I get off the drugs and I say I'm never going to do that again, I go through heroin as a really nasty withdrawal. It's not lethal, but you feel like you're dying, but you're actually totally fine. It's like a really bad flu. and then you get off it and you're like, okay, things are great, and then for some reason you just end up doing it again. For me, what it looks like is it's like very out of the blue. It's one day I'll wake up and I will go do some, and it's kind of like you're not really in control at that point. The second piece to it, though, which I also identify with pretty much any drug I do, it's known as a physical allergy, which is actually the really interesting part, because this is where the disease makes me bodily and mentally different from pretty much everyone else.
Okay.
And it's basically once I put drugs in my body or alcohol in my body, I can't control how much I'm going to do after that. So if I were to drink 2 beers right now, that may set me off to the point where I can't say whether I can't drink 2 beers and say I'm going to stop and then stop. There's something that makes you want to do more, and it's a very hard thing to say no to, especially when you're inebriated. So
it's true. It's why I stick to 2. That's my rule. And it's, the places in town, they give you 2 when you play. But if I drink 2 quickly, it's the same thing. I'll just go right to 10.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the case for a lot of people. But then also, with us, it's like even just like 1 will set it off. Like I don't see the point in drinking a beer or drinking 2 beers. Like it really doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing is I'm not drinking to enjoy the taste or anything. I'm drinking to change the way I feel, because the way I feel right now is super objectionable to me. But then there's times where the allergy doesn't make sense for me. Like, for example, with heroin or opiates and stuff like that, it's possible to do it and not get sick if you space it out over a few days, because you only start to get the withdrawals if you are doing it every day for a long period of time. But if you can space it out right, you shouldn't really feel any withdrawal symptoms. But
I've never met anybody. I've never encountered a single person, not one. And believe me, I know a lot of heroin addicts over the years. It tore through my friends in high school.
There's some people who
Lost
can.
3
There's some
friends in a
people who
year
can
or
do
2.
it like gentlemen. They'll do it. They'll get on a habit, and then they'll kick it and not touch it for a few years, and then they'll do it again. But
I'm not believing that for a minute.
once you get to that point, usually you probably have a problem.
Yeah.
Once you're putting a needle in your arm, you probably have some other issues in there. So
It's true. I'm just not it's an addictive substance. It's not like other illicit drug. Like, not every illicit drug is addictive.
as like a physical addiction.
Right.
Yeah.
With heroin, there's a physical addiction. Same with cocaine. So, and meth, right? And that's why, I don't love the just say no Nancy Reagan thing, but the not even once does make sense, because it's like not even once, because some of those are so addictive. Yeah, after 1 you're like, oh, I gotta have more of that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's definitely my experience with cocaine and stuff like that, which is why I stayed away from uppers, because I got too crazy on those, and like that was bad. But it's so strange with, just kind of how it works with heroin, especially, is it's like, like honestly for me, it doesn't even feel good anymore. My last relapse, like it didn't fix what it used to fix anymore. I would still feel the effects from it, but I didn't feel any better.
What was it fixing before?
Basically it's, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but pretty much if we're going from a 12-step standpoint,
Okay.
is that I am always going to be restless and irritable and discontent. This is kind of where it gets into sort of a spiritual kind of sense, but it's because I'm trying to run the show, run the entire world, and I think things need to be a certain way for me to be okay. And when they don't line up like that, I will try and make them that way. And even if they are that way, I still don't feel okay. And this kind of discontent that I feel with my life and the world around me is so great. Something's always off. Something always needs to be fixed. But when I'm on drugs, everything's totally fine. I'm completely at peace in the present moment, totally chill. Everything's great. That's what
You're also not functioning.
Yeah, that's what drugs used to do for me. I mean, I functioned pretty well. I mean, in this last little stint, I did still manage to hold down a job and stuff like that. Luckily,
true.
I got intervened on at a point, before it got too bad. But, there's a lot of people who are functioning addicts, and it's actually pretty surprising.
Well, I know there's a lot of functioning addicts. I don't know that there's a lot of functionally active users.
I mean, eventually it gets to the point where you can't.
Right.
But it's pretty surprising. There's a fair amount of them. So.
Well, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. But thank you for sharing that. That's a pretty...
Yeah, thank you.
That's
No
a pretty
problem.
interesting outlook because there's a lot of... both of us have certainly had addiction in the families, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it tore through my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I stay in touch because it would be awful not to. And these are great people, but this drug tore their lives apart and just put them in a place where digging out of that hole is just brutal. Like
Yeah.
you've at least been able to find active, gainful employment, but you're also in a city where that can be done.
Yeah, it's very true.
And so it's tough. The other day I got a call and the last comment was because I helped in what way I could, but I can't help financially, right? But when you call and say my friend's in trouble and she's she's not that far from you, can you help? I go, yeah, here's how I can help. I can give you the number to the battered women's shelter. I can give you the number to the local police department. That's the way I can help, and hopefully it helped.
Yeah.
I have no way of knowing because I asked him to keep in touch or to keep me posted, and it doesn't. But the last text message I received was, "You're a good man, Charlie Brown," and I always feel like Charlie Brown when it comes to this stuff because they're holding the football,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, I got to take a kick at it because this might be the time. But every time, it's pulled away. So...
Yeah, especially when dealing with, people in active addiction.
Addiction, yeah.
My mom's a member of, kind of the Families Anonymous kind of fellowships and stuff like that. So they're
There's
pretty...
a Families Anonymous?
Yeah, basically it's kind of like... it's pretty much a support group for if you have an addict member of your family and how to do that. Because there's like a lot, even with friends and stuff, there's a lot of like enabling and stuff that goes on. And honestly, like the best thing to do in most situations is just cut them off. I mean, that's what my parents had to do for me. And that's like probably the only reason why I was able to, come to the conclusion where I need to get out of my current situation is because my parents are just like, we're done.
Done.
We're over it.
Huh.
And I can't speak from my own personal experience, but it seems like an extremely hard thing to do. And it's hard for me to do too, I guess, sort of in personal experience, because I have a lot of friends who've gone out, even in the past couple months, where, you want to help them and you want to try and be there for them, but, they're addicts doing drug addict stuff. Like, they're going to screw you over, they're going to take your money, you're basically going to fund their relapse, and you say, well, I hope things work out, I had a couple of things like that, so.
It's true. I try to keep in contact. I certainly always try to send good vibes and pray, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to cut people off. The worst was then when the contact came back through, but through back channels.
Mm.
So when you feel like I'm being sent a message through somebody else, it's not a good feeling.
No.
Just wish we could solve the problem. I don't know how to solve it. It's just one day at a time. Everybody's just got to do their best.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for me, honestly, like, I never really took too much stock in 12-step fellowships until I came down here and actually learned what it was about. Especially down in Texas, the brand of recovery is just so great out here. It's very out of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which was kind of the, the major starter of...
Was Bill W?
Yeah, Bill W. and Dr. Bob and the original members, compiled together the book. And basically, it's the recovery community is super strong down here. I never gave it too much stock because I never wanted to give it a try. But I'm not saying it's the only way out, but It's the only way I've seen work for other people and for myself.
Yeah.
And so that's why I continue to do it.
It's a good point. And there is they have a success rate,
Yeah.
and they do measure it. I wish the 12-step programs were more successful, like statistically, but you are dealing with such a complex thing. I don't know. I don't know what would even be realistic to ask of. I don't know what the competing theories are and what their success rates are. I don't know any of it.
I mean, even just a few successes, just based on the nature of the disease, is pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
Seeing people that were just really bad off, and you're at this point where you can't stop and stay stopped, and once you start, you can't control how much you take, and it's an endless cycle, and there's no way to break out of it. Seemingly, it's called a hopeless state of mind and body, because you're pretty much on my own power. I'm pretty much screwed. I'm doomed. Like, how I look at it, really, especially with in regards to the diseases, it's not that I can't drink and I can't do drugs again, is that I'm going to eventually, unless I have something else in my life, unless I have the 12 steps.
Actively work on it.
And you actively work on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Actively try and maintain a connection to a higher power, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get too, into that.
Though I will say
some
this.
heady stuff, but
there's a lot of people out there who've been in similar situations, so hopefully where you are now and your state of mind, especially if they're not quite there yet, hopefully something will click and help them get through to the next part of their journey. We find that with musicians a lot, where like I talk to a lot of guys that have been at it a lot longer than me, and you can't always take all of it in, because you have no frame of reference of the future, right? And if they're speaking to things from the future perspective, it's tough. But hopefully it helps. So, but what's interesting is we have the internet now. So I would like to actually hear the stories of addiction in the comments. That would be pretty interesting stuff, right? And if we all keep it civil, we all keep it positive. If you've been affected by it, or if you've struggled with it yourself, and you just want to lay it out there in a semi-anonymous way, like, if you specifically don't, I don't think we would, that would be too complex to put in next week's episode, for example, so we won't be able to do that, but I want to hear the stories. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, no problem, man.